Cedric Porter. I am still, and used to be more, a journalist too, so I understand what it's like being that side, not so much this side so often, but I look forward to your questions later. As I say, I was a journalist. I grew up on a farm as well and studied agriculture and then journalism, and about 4 years ago set up my own consultancy called Supply Intelligence, and I work with retailers and other people helping them understand agricultural supply and working with farmers more successfully. So I'm going to be just spending a few minutes on Europe's unique farming challenge and putting that within the context of the Common Agricultural Policy. We've heard a lot about the extra people that are going to be in the world, the going from 7 billion to 9 billion over the next few years. But I just wanted to put that in context, how that would work within Europe. And the real message is the way we are moving away from the Common Agricultural Policy. So the reform of the CAP is set to further decouple that payments between production, environmental and social protection, and really moving towards this area-based payments. Some parts of Europe already have done that. England and parts of Germany are now really based on area payments, and there has been some pain in doing that, but most other parts of Europe are still based on a historic payment, and by 2020 all payments will be based on an area basis, which will take some work to do that between now and then. And my real argument is the farmers will only be able to improve their incomes from what they produce. It's really, the payments are really now going to be for delivery of social and environmental goods, and so farmers are either going to have to increase their output, increase their quality, or improve their efficiencies, or a mixture of both, or all three. And this is one of the key things that I want to put across, that Europe is the world's only shrinking population. All other continents are predicted to grow, and perhaps the most significant growth in percentage terms is a near doubling by 2050 in the population of Africa. Asia, already a very large population, going to well over 5 billion by 2050. South America, considerable growth in South America. But actually a 6% drop in population in Europe. So that's going to create issues for farmers, that actually a lot of their food they will be producing might have to go outside Europe if they want to be developing their markets. And within Europe, it's a different and mixed picture too. So countries such as France and Germany, population set to decline a little, whereas in the UK, population over the next 20 years is predicted to increase by about 15%, and the UK getting towards 75 million people, up from about 60 million people now, within the next 30 or 40 years, making it the largest Western European country, obviously presenting opportunities not just for farmers in the UK, but also for farmers outside the UK who want to supply that market. And that market, often the changing markets within Europe, the growing markets will be in ethnic populations of Asian type populations or whatever, who might have a different way of eating and different tradition of food than the traditional populations of countries. And demand is going to be greater for grain outside Europe. This is just coarse grain use within, these are predictions, UN figures, UNFAO figures for where grain consumption of coarse grains of maize and things like that is going to be. Of course, sort of massive increase here in China on this axis here, but also places like Nigeria having a massive increase in coarse grain use, and Brazil, and also Europe again having a large increase. And demand for meat is again greater outside Europe than it is within Europe. We're seeing with Brazil increasing from around about sort of 90. These are on a sort of that's kilograms per head, so just over 90 kilograms of per head to about 110 in Brazil, and a massive increase in China in percentage terms, from just over 50 kilograms per head now to just in the next 15 years to nearly around about 90 kilograms per head there. And again in Africa as well, great growth, but real stability there in the European Union. And high yields, that's giving European producers an advantage at the moment, but how much further can our yields in Europe go? The cost per tonne, this is some work done by a UK organisation, Bidwell's, from 2009, looking at the cost of producing a tonne of wheat across the world. And actually Canada had one of the highest costs of production, with Russia and Romania the lowest costs of production, and Canada largely having a very high cost of production because of the few tonnes per hectare that they could produce, the lower production per hectare. This one only looked at the UK, but the UK sort of reasonable in the middle there, producing around about 8 tonnes a hectare, so spreading the costs across more hectares. But the issue there is, can these countries here produce, and even Canada and Australia and some of the established grain countries, can they increase their yields and therefore reduce their cost per tonne, giving them a greater advantage over European producers? Again, it's the same with cost of production and milk production, with the Netherlands and the USA very exposed particularly to high grain costs, because they have a lot of bought-in feed. And actually the country in Europe that's probably the greatest advantage in terms of cost of production is Ireland, largely a grass-based system, but still no way near the advantages that somewhere like New Zealand will have, which is largely forage-based, grass-based systems, so not exposed to those very, very high grain prices. Of course, with some livestock production, like pigs and poultry, they again are very, very exposed to high grain prices, and until you can start feeding grass to pigs and poultry, that's going to be an issue. And again, there's the UK sort of sitting in the middle there. This was some work done by Savills, who are an international land agency and land advising company, and they did a sort of risk and benefit assessment of where to invest your money. If you're looking to invest your money in agriculture, which countries would you do it in? And so the ones that are the best ones with the best sort of score balance, the best balance between risk, the risk of your investment going badly, compared to the benefit of your investment going well, was actually Brazil, Australia, and USA, and again the Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Romania, and that's largely because of their potential to increase yields and production. And so some of the more established countries within Europe, Denmark, Ireland, France, because they're so well established, there's less opportunity to increase production. They're pretty low risk countries to do business in and farm in, but because of their the lack of benefit, if you like, because of the lack of potential for increasing yields and production, they score quite lowly on that score balance. So again, I think there's something that Europe needs to be aware of, that people looking to invest in agriculture might not be looking in, particularly in the established countries within Europe. They're going to be looking in elsewhere in South America, the Americas, and in Eastern Europe. And again, New Zealand scores quite highly there too. So just bringing that all together, the challenges for European farming, reducing CAP payments. It's proposed that payments will reduce by a fifth, by 20% by 2020 anyway. And where we are at with the way that the European Union is, where the euro is and whatever, there's absolutely no certainty, or a lot less certainty than there was. And also, I think beyond 2020, there could be growing political and public pressure to be reducing support again further, particularly if we've seen high grain prices in that time, that people will say, well, why do you need all these supports if we're paying a lot more for our food and you're getting good grain prices and maybe better meat prices? Why should we be paying you this extra support? And again, the rising costs of production. This is going to be a significant issue for everyone, and there's a real role for the companies here and for AGCO and Massey Ferguson in making better use of fertilizer and pesticides, and really sort of building on that. Figures from the UK, sorry, all my figures are largely based on the UK, but in the last 15-20 years, the input use has reduced by 20%, but agricultural output has increased by 26%. So you can it shows that farmers are already increasing output with using fewer resources, but they're going to have to do that even more up that game. And I think this is a real issue for European farmers, the decline in European sales and growth elsewhere, and Europe is going to have to become much more exports focused. And I think the CAP is going to have to recognise that and not have systems that are put in place that are going to make European farmers less competitive. There's a very important role in the CAP in protecting the fantastic heritage and environment of Europe, which is one of the most respected and valued within the world. But that's got to be balanced with giving the freedom for farmers to farm and to be able to compete with other regions for business outside Europe. And I'm looking at the advantages for European farmers, good access to technology, and that's a real history. Some of the best crop genetics and animal genetics have been within Europe, and obviously machinery technology Europe has taken a real lead on that, and companies like Massey Ferguson, AGCO being very much at the forefront of that. And again, the growing importance of farming. Governments and populations recognise the need for food security, and I think there's going to be much more of an emphasis on that, particularly if you're seeing higher food prices and food price inflation. No government wants to be seen to see food prices going rocketing and going so high that people can't afford to eat effectively. The primary role of a government is to feed its, or have a system that can feed its people. And if you can't do that, then you're, as a government, in serious trouble. Relatively good climate, the real mix of climate here. I mean, climate change. There are predictions for the southern part of Europe to be more exposed to that, and perhaps northern Europe, some of the production shifting northwards. I think it was Trelleborg this morning was saying about the 1% increase in alcohol content because of climate change. So there are advantages to climate change as well as problems. And I think there's a real, if we can have innovative and motivated farmers and the experience that European farmers have got, and that's a real good base to make the most of the new opportunities that will be coming towards farmers. And hopefully there is a sort of renewed optimism amongst farmers. I can certainly see it, and seeing it with the public as well, a renewed sort of recognition and respect for what farmers do, which can be built upon. So just in summary, a unique time for European farming, and farmers have that commercial opportunity and perhaps arguably a moral duty to help feed the world. Europe is if you could say blessed with some of the best agricultural land in the world and the technology, and despite the Euro crisis, some of the resources to help that happen and to help increase production both in Europe and elsewhere. And I think European politicians need to recognise that the role of farmers and production within the Common Agricultural Policy, and farmers need to be encouraged to protect the environment and the resources free to produce fuel and food and fibre that the growing world is going to desperately need over the coming years. So many thanks for that, and thank you for your attention. Thank you to Massey Ferguson, and I'll just hand back to Richard.